اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ثم والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For the past few nights, we were taking a look at the relationship between fasting and taqwa. In the Quran, Allah says that if you fast, there's a chance that you might increase in your God consciousness, your awareness, your taqwa. So we wanted to know what was the relationship between the two. One of the next discussions which came was many of us have trouble acting upon these prescriptions in Islam. Fasting, for example, praying, observing hijab. We wanted to know what is the source of this problem. Why is it that somebody might claim that they're a Muslim but not actually act like a Muslim? So last night we opened up a discussion on identity. Before we get into the deeper topic of self-improvement, self-control, self-awareness, which are all necessary topics, we had to figure out what is the self. How do you think of and identify yourself? So we said, we have an identity crisis right now. Most of us, if not all of us, would at least identify as being Muslim. And maybe some of you would say, well, I think I'm a mu'min. We said that if somebody deep down feels that they're a Muslim or a mu'min, meaning they believe wholeheartedly that they believe in a God, they believe in prophets, they believe in the imams, they believe in a day of judgment, they believe that they'll be accounted for their deeds in this world, then their actions should line up to that. But we all know that there's a lot of things lacking in our life, where if we take a look honestly and think to ourselves, we would know that as a Muslim, I should be doing X, but I'm not actually performing that. So what I identify as is not lining up with my actions. So we said that, how did this identity loss take place? How did this identity crisis actually start? So we gave an analogy. We said that, we used the example of Superman. So the same way Superman had a specific identity, and then over time got to understand who he truly was, and then embraced his identity and acted upon that. The same thing has happened to us. We have a true, real identity that we've forgotten. And Allah said in the Quran that if you forget about me, if you forget about God, if you forget about Allah, then I'm going to make you forget about your own self. I'll make you forget your nafs. I'll make you forget your identity. You won't know who you are anymore. You'll act in contrary to what you actually believe. And then he ends and says that you're going to end up becoming a fasiq. You'll be an open sinner. We gave the other example of, for example, somebody who claims to be a vegan and eats meat. For us, that sounds ridiculous, but that's what we are. I mean, nowadays, you see somebody who claims to be Muslim, but really between them and an atheist, there's no difference in action, right? So we said, what are some of the causes of this? And we mentioned a few. For example, one of the most important was parenting, child upbringing. How a child is raised in that household is one of the strongest determining factors of how religious will they actually be when they grow up. We mentioned community, we mentioned schooling. There are other factors that we could go into, but we left it aside. For example, media, TV, other things. We ended with a poll last night too, because this discussion about identity can go forward. You know, most of the people who've lost their identity, there's deeper causes as well, and there's ways that we can solve it and answer that problem. So the poll basically was to choose whether we wanted to go into these issues deeper and see how we can solve our identity crisis, or to go to this issue of fasting, taqwa, self-improvement, etc. So it was about 50-50 breakdown, I think, or close enough. Most individuals said that they want to continue on this topic of identity and continue on these issues of common misconceptions that Muslims themselves have nowadays. Right now, what are some of the doubts that we have about our own faith? That according to statistics are one of the major reasons why Muslims who are born and raised, for example, or even if they convert or revert to the religion, they end up leaving later on, or they just end up not practicing. So we wanted to look at some of those reasons and start showing if there's any logic or rationale or reason to why people are leaving the deen. Some individuals said that they want to do a little bit of both. So what we'll try to do then, inshallah, is using this Slido. I'll go through a few common misconceptions. The first tonight will be whether believing in religion, or specifically believing in God, is actually a logical and rational belief. That will be the first thing we're going to talk about tonight. The following nights, we'll be talking about this problem of good and evil. We see evil in the world, and we're told that God's supposed to be merciful, kind, compassionate, and all good. But why are natural disasters happening? Why is there oppression all around the world? And why especially those who follow the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam, why are they suffering so much throughout the world? So these are things we're also going to examine. If there are other specific issues that you have, we don't want to set up a poll. You can send that into Slido, just say that you want this thing talked about, and I'll take a look inshallah, and I'll see if I can fit that into the remaining 10, 11 nights that we have. So we'll go through a few of these misconceptions inshallah. Then after that, towards the end, we'll switch back to our original topic of fasting, taqwa, self-improvement, and self-awareness. If that sounds okay, send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That's my favorite trick, right? I can say anything I want and tell you to send a salawat, and you're going to have to do it, right? Even if I said if you don't agree, you'd still send a salawat. So, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That was what we call pity salawat, but it's okay. We'll take it. So tonight, what we want to answer is this question. People right now, especially atheists, and again, even some Muslims who are having extreme doubts, very, very specifically and especially people who are being raised in this country and raised in the West. Atheism has become the new trend. Being irreligious is what's cool, what's modern. It's not cool to be religious. An atheist, a materialist, the average person in the West, when they look at individuals who are religious, they laugh. They laugh at us. Like, why are you believing in these fairy tales? Why are you believing in these stories that were made up in the Stone Age? You're not using your brains. You're not thinking. You're not being rational. You're not being logical. Why are you believing these things? There's no proof for the existence of God. So why do you buy all these other things that your establishment, your religious established thing is feeding you? Leave that and just be a good person. That's all that matters. So what we want to answer tonight is it actually illogical and irrational to believe in God? Now, after we do this, if we have time tonight, then we'll go forward a little bit and show that there's actually logical, rational proofs for the existence of God. But we'll have to see if we can get there, inshallah. First thing we need to figure out, okay, so I'm using this word, or they use the word, rational, logical, right? Or the other side, irrational, illogical. Well, what does that actually mean? Now, I guarantee all of you have some idea of what you think that word means, right? Because we all use it in our conversations, especially in our arguments, right? Especially when it's social media arguments, right? I know your WhatsApp groups. I've seen what goes on there. I know what's happening. But, I mean, even for something which is not important, if you're talking about socio-political, religious issues, you go back and forth, maybe a little rationality makes sense there. But there's times when you get into discussions and arguments where rationality doesn't really make sense. You can't really use the word there. So for example, well, since I mentioned Superman yesterday, I think I'll continue with that example, right? So let's just say this debate happened probably, 2-3 years ago when Batman vs. Superman came out. So obviously one of the major arguments for those who are into comics is Batman vs. Superman, who's a better superhero? Now obviously, if you look at the debates, go to, let's say, some YouTube thread, which is the worst place to go to. The comment thread in a YouTube video is terrible. If you look there, you'll see people accusing each other, right? They'll say, well, Superman has super strength and super speed. He can, kill Batman with a punch. He's obviously better. And somebody will respond, no, you're being illogical. That's irrational. And then he'll bring his proofs. And they go back and forth like this, just attacking each other. So what people normally do is they take the word irrational, illogical, right? You have no proof, you have no evidence, and basically they just want to throw it at somebody to insult them, right? Just an ad hominem attack. They don't actually know what rational logical means, but because it's not your opinion, it's going against what you believe, you just want to use that word, just to make them seem like they're not as smart as you, right? That's usually how people use the word. And obviously this debate is a useless debate, because we all know that Batman's obviously better. Anyway, so what is the definition? So the simple definition is, for something to be logical and rational, is that you have to have facts. You have to be able to use your reasoning to get to it, which means that your emotions shouldn't be involved in proving you're correct. So let's use this as an example for our religion. So let's say someone comes to you, a coworker or a good non-Muslim friend, or even let's say a Muslim friend who's doubting their faith. And they ask you, why do you believe in this stuff? Why do you believe in God? What brought you to religion? Why are you doing all this? You answer, well, God has just made my spirit grow. He's given me this sense of love in my life. He's changed me for the better. I feel really good when I think about my religion. I feel great when I come to the masjid. That might be true, but that's not a rational proof, right? Because somebody can equally say that, well, I'm an atheist, or I'm a Scientologist, or whatever they are. Whenever I go to my Scientologist temple, I feel great too, and we don't believe in a God. Or someone who goes to a satanic church, they say, listen, we go and we worship Satan, and I feel great there too. So your emotions, if they're your reason for why you're doing something, again, I'm not saying it's wrong to use that, right? We have our belief in the fitrah, in our soul. Put that aside for now. We're trying to answer the question of proving something rationally and logically, using evidence. Using your own personal experience won't do that. It won't follow that criteria of being rational and logical, right? So then, how can you tell what's rational? How do you know what's logical? Well, there's a whole science behind that. In the same way, if I were to tell you that 3 minus 2 is 2, you'd say, well, you sound dumb. That's not correct. It's obviously 1. So now imagine if I had 3 apples in front of me, right? I said, let me prove it to you. I have 3 apples. I take away 2. Now how many are in my hand over here? 2. See, 3 take away 2 is 2. You obviously say, listen, that looks nice, but that's not how you do subtraction, right? You have the larger number, you take away, and you go back to what the original was, what's left over from there, not what you took away. That doesn't make any sense. So mathematics has its rules. Logic has its rules. If you want to determine how something is logical, rational, you have to follow the rules. And we study this in the Hawza, right? It's called the science of mantiq, ilmul mantiq. Now, obviously, I'm not going to give you a crash course in logic. That will be later on, inshallah. We'll get a little bit at that workshop. That happens after the program. But we need to know at least a little bit so we can answer the question of whether it's logical and rational to believe in God. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, you've probably all learned and have acted upon something in your life. You've used logic, but you just don't know it, right? Because Allah's given us all intellects. You got an aql, you have a brain. You're using it constantly, but you don't know what's going on, behind the scenes. So if I say, okay, A equals B, and B equals C, then what conclusion can you draw? Just a little louder, if you don't mind. A little louder. A equals C. So you offer participation, and people don't want to participate. What can I do? So yeah, A equals C. Obviously, you all said that. You all know that. You didn't need to learn any logic. It's just built into your brain. You know that if A is B and B is C, then A equals C. Now, usually we use this in math, right? But you can also use this for logical statements, right? So now, this is called Form 1, for those who are interested. In Form 1 in logic, you have a statement. If A is B and B is C, then A is C. That's a rational, logical conclusion, yeah? Okay. Now, let's see if we can take some of the proofs that exist for God and apply it to this A, B, B, C kind of thing, right? So the first thing is, which proof are we going to use? Do we even have proofs available? Or is it just this thing where, well, my parents told me God exists and now I have to believe it? No, that's not the case. You might have learned it in your madrasas, it's possible. But the amount of proofs that exist are probably more than I can count, right? and I'll give you some fancy words just to impress you, because I want people to like me, obviously. But you've got teleological proofs, you have cosmological proofs, you have ontological proofs, you have proofs by the fitra, you have moral and ethical proofs, you have mathematical proofs, you have scientific proofs. I can go on and on, but I won't because my notes don't have anything else, so I can't go on and on. What I'm saying is you have a lot of different versions of proofs, and every single proof, it's available for anybody at any single level. So you have very simplistic ones, which are meant for the general mass, and then you have those for philosophers, those who really want to go deep into it, right? To have absolute 100% philosophical certainty that God exists. Everything's taken care of. Our ulama, our philosophers have worked on these things for many years, and this is not something brand new. This is something that even our imams had to deal with, right? Sometimes we think that atheism is a brand new phenomenon, which is not true. Atheism existed even during the times of the imams, and they dealt with them accordingly. It just happens to be that right now atheism is the biggest trend. It's the hottest trend right now. That's the issue. What we want to go through tonight is the simplest one, which is called, it's a teleological argument. Now, it's a fancy word. What does it mean? It's called the proof from design, argument from design. Most of you have probably learned it, but I'm going to go through it quickly because we might not have heard it in this version. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So, many philosophers have used this throughout history, right? This is not just Muslims. You have Greek philosophers, Roman philosophers, Christian scholars, Jewish scholars. This has been something that's been used by everybody. It's a very, very common, very famous one, and it's very easy to understand. So the first thing I want to do, if you can just give me your attention, because I know that sometimes these discussions, they get a little dry, but you have to bear with me, because I can't do everything, right? If you want to know the proofs, you got to sit through the dry stuff. There's no real way I can make proofs super interesting. I threw out Batman and Superman, but I can't really do it like every 5 minutes, right? Anyway, so here's the argument. This universe has order and design. Okay? That's where A equals B. This universe has order and design. Anything that has order and design needs somebody to design it, needs somebody to order it. Okay? So I'm going to say it again, and then I want you to give me the conclusion. But you can do it louder than last time, if you don't mind. This universe has order. Anything with order needs a designer, therefore. Thank you very much. Okay, Hasan. This universe has a designer. This is the basic form, right? This is the basic argument. It's following the A, B, B, C, A equals C. So far, it's completely logical. There's no emotion there. I didn't have to quote my mom or dad or anything like that. I didn't have to go back into the Quran, nothing like that. This is just logical statements. That's it. But now we have to go one step deeper. Now, because somebody can use these A, B, B, C things and kind of throw you off too. Now, let me give you an example how that's problematic. Let's just say I say, every Shia is a grave worshiper, and grave worshippers are going to hell, therefore, you said not me. So, you can have an A, B, B, C, A equals C, logically it flows, but your actual statements are incorrect. Those have to be examined too, right? Obviously, no, every Shia is not a grave worshipper. Of course not. It's ridiculous. So, we have to look at our first statement, right? Is this universe ordered and designed? And that's the simplest one to prove, right? Because even if somebody's a hardcore atheist, a pure atheist, they don't believe in any soul, any consciousness, no immaterial stuff, no religious stuff, they just believe in science and what they can see and feel and touch, that's it. Say, okay, now you tell me, is this universe ordered and designed, or is it in chaos? And they have to say that it's ordered and designed. Why? Because that's how science works. If this universe was not ordered and designed, science falls apart. Right? Because how does science work? How can you determine at what temperature water boils? Because you experiment over and over and over again. You see the same result. You see cause, effect, A is B, and you make a conclusion. There has to be order. So for example, if I take an apple seed, I plant it in the ground, put the right amount, it gets the right amount of sunlight, water, all that. What kind of tree should grow? An apple tree. I'm giving you really easy questions because I think the tougher ones you guys weren't responding to, so I don't know what to do. Say you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. Has it ever been the case where you plant an apple seed and all of a sudden you get an airplane? No, that would be complete chaos, right? And our universe doesn't work like that. So this first statement is proven by science itself, by the fact that we have science, that we see cause and effect working constantly, and things don't go off into chaos. We know that that first statement is logically sound and correct. And you don't have to bring in any emotion or anything like that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that was our first. The universe has order and design. Okay, we're good. Next, anything that has order and has design needs somebody to design it. You need some orderer, some guy on top of it to make sure things are running smoothly. Now, deep down, I say that, yeah, this makes sense. Again, we have to make sure that we're thinking about this logically, rationally, with proofs, and not just it's something that we feel is correct. So how can we go about this? So let's just say I have a tray in front of me, right? And I have a couple different colors on it. Let's say red, green, blue, yellow. Yeah? So I got a tray, and I have a few different colors on it. I'm walking, I trip, and I fall, and all the colors spill on the floor. Now you take a look, and that the colors, the way they spilled, had made this nice little, let's say, smiley face, or some picture or a face. Now, is that something that could rationally happen? Is that possible? Yeah, that could happen. That's possible. Now imagine, same thing. I'm walking with a tray, but instead of 3 or 4 colors, now I got, let's say, 10, 20 colors. Right, let's up it up. So I got 20 colors on my tray. I'm walking, I trip and I fall, and let's say it makes, I don't know, like a picture of a house with a family inside. Something like that. Is that possible? Now you're like, I don't know. Some of you who are really, really quick to be skeptical, like that sounds far-fetched. But those of you who are a bit more open-minded or reasonable might say, it could happen. Yeah, it probably won't. It's highly improbable, but that could happen. Fine. Okay. Let's go the next step. Imagine I have a palette of 2 billion colors now, because I have really big hands, obviously. 2 billion colors. I'm walking. I trip. So when I trip with all these colors, the first thing it does is it makes a masterpiece, and this masterpiece starts painting other paintings and pictures right away. And then all those paintings and pictures start making other pictures. And it just goes on till infinity, making all these beautiful masterpieces. Now, is this something that's rational and logical or not? Now, if your brain is working, again, I'm trying to be kind as I can, but it's tough for me. I'm not a really nice guy. But I'm trying to be nice. Can any rational, logical person say that this is something which is probable? No, this is not probable. This is crazy. It's impossible for something to spill like this and to create over and over and over again, making these intelligent, finely designed and tuned pictures. So what we say is the same thing. Right now, on one hand, somebody will say that, okay, we have order and design here, but why are you saying that there has to be somebody behind it? Well, we're saying because right now, we have over 8.7 billion different species of life who are all working out fine, who have and are working in this life cycle system. They're working exactly as they need to. Our bodies function perfectly for what they need for this planet. The way, right after the Big Bang, as things occurred, and inshallah maybe we can go to the Big Bang discussion on another night if people are interested. But all those variables which need to be finely tuned are exactly tuned so that life could have existed on this planet. Not just us, but 8.7 billion different species. Now, if somebody wants to make the claim that, yeah, all that happened randomly, it's like, listen, you can't make crazy claims like that without proving it. Our claim is the rational one, that somebody would have put all these pieces together and allowed for this to happen. Your claim that this is randomly happening, that's a crazy claim. We're not the crazy ones, you are. You should bring some proofs for that, not us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, our first statement was that the universe is ordered and designed. We said that's rational, that's logical. Then anything that has order and design needs a designer. So that's also rational and logical. So therefore, this universe has an order and designer. A, B, B, C, A, C. It's as simple as that, right? In no place did we insert our emotions. We didn't have to bring in the words of the prophets or the imams. We didn't have to resort to anything else that comes from culture or tradition or anything in the East. It's nothing like that. We said, using even just what science is telling us, what atheists will agree to, this is what you get. So now if somebody wants to come and say, your belief in God is irrational, illogical, you can give them this simple idea and say, okay, you tell me where is the lack of logic, where is the irrationality in this? I'm following a logical form of A, B, B, C, A equals C, so you can't fault me there. And I've showed you that both of these statements are rational, logical, and scientific. They're based upon facts and evidence. If you want to prove against that, you have to bring some claims now. Allah says in the Quran, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you're sadiq, if you're truthful, you bring your burhan, you bring your proof. We've got ours, what is yours? So hopefully this made sense. I tried my best to dumb it down as best as possible. Now again, this is a simple version, right? There are more advanced versions of these kinds of arguments. But because of lack of time, because we have to take care of all the different types of individuals in the audience, I wanted to keep it to this one. If anybody's interested in the other types, we can discuss it either afterwards, at a later session, or those who are interested, again, you can use Slido and mention that specifically. So let's just wrap up. Our question was whether it was rational or logical to believe in religion and God specifically. We showed, without using any sort of emotional evidence, without using personal beliefs, that rationally, logically, it's possible and you should be believing in a God. Therefore, we are the rational and logical individuals in this society. If anybody wants to counter that now, which they do, they might mention things like evolution. They might talk about the Big Bang, or multiverse theory, or they'll talk again about this idea of being random, or string theory, or nowadays, especially with people like Stephen Hawking being very, very famous, they say, oh, he says that a universe can come from nothing. And that, according to the laws of quantum physics and quantum mechanics and all this, yes, you can have nothing and then something comes out of there randomly. Now, of course, these are more advanced arguments. I don't want to bring it from the member because I don't know if that's the right place. If you're interested, again, you can use this Slido feature and we can discuss it there. And we'll have a separate discussion for that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I'll go through some of the questions that were left over from last night, and then we'll move on to any that were from tonight, inshallah. So one of the first questions from last night was that people argue constantly about different issues, religious, political. Everyone thinks their opinion is right and Islamic. Should we even be debating these things in our centers since we're just lay people and we're not learned scholars? How do we know the difference and how do we choose between different opinions, especially when scholars come and give us different opinions? So before I answer that, just a disclaimer. So this Q&A that we're doing for after the lecture was designed for something that was related to the actual topic, either from the previous nights or from tonight. So with your permission, I want to answer those. Any other questions that come in that are good questions but maybe are unrelated to the topic, we can talk with the MC and we can set up a separate day or a separate session and we can address all those other random issues. But the short answer for this question about helping to determine between right and wrong and having discussions and debates, this is actually what we'll be discussing in the workshop after the main program tonight. If you want to know, our goals tonight in the workshop will be how do you frame and create an actual good argument? How do you analyze other people's arguments? How do you differentiate between good and bad arguments? And how do you engage in a good, polite, civil dialogue and communication and discussion with somebody on any sort of topic? So that's what we're doing after. So there's a few other questions that I'll leave because they're not related, so forgive me. Someone asked, is the true time for Maghrib at sunset? In parentheses it says Sunni time. So the answer is yes and no. How is it yes and no? It's simple. We have a concept called taqleed. You follow your marja. If you follow Ayatul Sistani, then the way that he has proven Maghrib to be is the quote-unquote later time, the 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, after sunset. Other maraji may say that it's at that sunset time, right? It's incorrect to say that sunset is Sunni time. This is not correct at all. We do have many ulama. For example, Ayatollah Bahjat, may Allah bless his soul, was one of the scholars who believed that it was this earlier time, the sunset time, which was the true Maghrib time. The idea is, you do your taqleed, you follow what your marja says. It's that simple, right? If you want to know the true time for Maghrib, the real true time, you're going to have to wait for the imam to come back, right? Because our scholars use the evidence that's available, and this is the conclusion they've made. The next question was, why is identity important? So what we wanted to try to highlight last night and today was that when somebody has an idea what their identity is, but their actions don't match up, it's a problem, right? This is just a natural thing for all of us. If you believe, let me give you an example. So right now, do you guys believe that you're dreaming or that you're awake? You probably think that you're awake, yeah? So you're going to act accordingly. Now, let's just say you thought you were in a dream right now. Would you be acting the exact same way you are right now? Probably not. I'm pretty sure in your dreams you don't sit in my lectures. I'm pretty sure nobody does that, right? My wife doesn't even do that. In your dreams, you're probably flying around like Superman, like me, for example, right? Or you're doing something else. The way that you think reality is, the way that you understand reality, you're going to act accordingly. You think it's fake, or you think it's a dream or an illusion, you're going to do whatever you want. You're going to fly around and, I don't know, do whatever you have to do in a dream. If you think it's real, then you have to act according to what's real, by cause and effect and what goes on. Another example with this, dream analogy. If you were driving in your dream, you probably would run a red light, or you probably would speed, or drive recklessly. But out there, although I've seen some of you drive, and there's no difference between your dream and your reality, but normally you guys try to follow the rules when you're driving, right? Because you know that if I don't follow the rules, I'm going to get in trouble. So now, if you have a belief system that, okay, this world is created by God, God created me, meaning there is a God, He sent down prophets, He sent down imams, there was a Quran, there's a bunch of rules associated with this religion that God wants me to follow, and I'll be accountable for that. So that's what you actually believe, that's real. So obviously you want to act according to that, right? You believe all this stuff is real, so that's what you want. I don't think there's anybody here who says, yeah, I'd like to go to hell and I'd like to be barbecued. I don't think anybody has that wish and desire, right? So, yeah, you want to go to heaven, you want to get the good boy points, you want to get your hoodies, whatever you guys want to do in heaven, fine. Go for all that. But you want your actions to line up to that. That's why identity is important. Find out what you really believe. If you don't believe in the things that Islam says, it's okay. There's research, there's questioning, you can do all this. We have scholars available, we have elders available, there's research available. Asking these questions, coming to the sessions is a way so that you can solidify the identity that you want to have, which inshallah should be your Muslim identity. I think that was it from last night. Let me see if there's anything else. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Okay, so this is the same thing as my phone. Okay. So give us young parents 3 points minimum to give our children a strong Islamic identity. Okay. So as I said before, if you really want, Islamic parenting is itself, you have to go through classes, right? It's a big topic. I'll try to give 3 points minimum since I've been commanded to do so, right? And I don't want to get this person upset. First one. So you guys have heard the famous hadith, right? That the life of a child, especially when it comes to upbringing, there's 3 stages. 0 to 7, meaning birth to 7, from 7 to 14 years old, and then 14 and above. Each of these different phases, there's a different way you have to interact with your child. I want to focus more on the from birth to 7 because this is very, very crucial this time. And what happens most of the time is people, when they lose out on the 0 to 7, they try to make up for it in the 7 to 14 and the 14 to 21, etc. You can't do that. There's no makeup for that. That's the problem. Anyway, so I guess I consider that point 1, right? Is you have to know that there's different phases. Number 2, what do you do in this first initial phase of 0 to 7? 0 to 7, according to the hadith, is that your child is your master, your Sayyid, your chief, your king. You're their subject. Now, let me give you an example of 2 different parenting styles. One style is a parent coming and saying, listen to their 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, it's namaz time. It's time to pray. Come pray with me. Oh, mom, dad, I don't want to. No, you have to come and pray, okay? Come. They force you to do it. Is this how you would actually talk to a king or your boss or somebody that's your Sayyid? No. The 0 to 7 age is where they're in charge and you have to follow and do ita'at of them. Now, what are the boundaries? Again, I can't go into details. The boundaries are their safety and other people's safety. Yeah, if they pick up a knife, then okay, maybe you could say, I got to pull it away, and if they cry, fine. You deal with it as necessary. But if they want to eat certain things or drink certain things that maybe you might think is not super healthy, you kind of have to be a little more lenient with children. You have to kind of let them dictate. What the test is for parents is, can you destroy and defeat your ego enough that you can submit to your child? And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Because you think that you know better. When in actuality, at times, they know better than you. At times, right? So to have leniency in anything and everything that's not harmful to them physically, that's kind of the boundaries. So that's kind of the second point. And again, there's a lot of details there that I really can't go in. And third point is, I'll expand the point about boundaries then. So if you're a says, let's say you want your child to eat organic, or you want them to limit their social media or their technology time, that's fine. But in that 0 to 7 phase, you have to set the boundaries there properly. That doesn't mean with harshness, that doesn't mean with forcing, it doesn't mean with hitting children, obviously. This is not the way the Ahlul-bayt taught. What you do is, from the beginning, you set a standard. Let's say, for example, you don't want your child to have soda. Okay, that's a good thing. Soda's terrible. Don't give them soda. Don't give them a chance to drink soda. Now, if they ever grab a cup, let's say they're at the masjid or at somebody's house, and they say, oh, mom, dad, can I have it? Don't slap it out of their hands, say, no, you can't have it. We've set a standard for you, and we want you to become Ahlul-bayt in your life. No. Say, listen, okay, let them have a little bit. If you've raised them properly, and you've set a standard in your own home, they themselves probably won't like it, number one. And even if they do like it, they're only going to get it once in a while. I mean, don't we have our cheat meals anyway? Even those who are, like bodybuilders or into nutrition. Yeah, you might eat healthy 6 out of 7 days, but yeah, you get a cheat meal, you get a cheat day. You're not going to let your kid have 1 cup of chai or a cup of soda if he gets it accidentally. Be more lenient, especially when it comes to, for those who have, their children, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles. You know how they want to take care of their kids, right? Of their nieces and nephews and grandchildren. When they come, they got to bribe the kid. They have to bribe them with their phone, they got to bribe them with candy, they have to bribe them with soda and all these things. Let the grandparents have their fun. Let the aunties and uncles have their fun. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you're a real parent, you'll set the standards in the house. Okay, so that's that question. Do you feel an Islamic school would help with the identity crisis? Maybe. I personally do feel it would help create a foundation. However, many around me feel that isolating our children gives them a huge shock when they enter the real world. What's your opinion? My opinion doesn't really mean much, but since you so nicely asked, I'll give you it. So, right there, if you look in the middle, it says, many around me feel that isolating our children gives them a huge shock when they enter the real world. So one of the tools that we'll learn in the workshop is to break down statements like this. If you see right there, there's a presumption in there that doing an Islamic school, or for example, homeschooling, will isolate our children and they won't know how to function in society. My response to anybody who believes in this is, have you looked at any of the actual research about the benefits, psychologically speaking, and the social benefits to homeschooling or Islamic schooling? I'm not saying you look at the worst schools. I'm saying look at every type of school. All the different homeschooling options which are available, which are according to the Waldorf model, the Montessori model, there's the exploratory model, there's like a middle grade exploratory plus teaching model. There's so many different ones. Which one are we talking about here? And Islamic schools. Islamic schools are literally just the same stuff they'd get at in public school, but they talk about God 5 times during the day. That's really not what we would call an Islamic school. Islamic education has its own philosophy and psychology behind it, and I don't know if many of our Islamic schools are actually implementing that. And I have to say that because, well, you asked, number one, and because it's crucial. The same way that I mentioned that parenting is really important right now, Islamic parenting, Islamic education is probably, if not tied for first, number 2 on the list. And it's really good if our community learns this, especially those who volunteer and teach. So what is my opinion? That, well, it depends. Proving that there is a supreme being that has created, sorry that we're going over time, I'll just make this the last one. Proving that there is a supreme being that has created the universe is fairly easy with the material you presented. Well, thank you very much. However, how does one prove that the supreme being is present in our everyday lives? So that obviously requires a bit more. You can do it with a little bit of aqaid or philosophy. And again, because there's some details there, maybe we can leave that for another lecture. You're jumping around too much. You're messing me up. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, did that one. A equals B, B equals C. That's correct. Allah has created human beings. Human beings, by nature, tend to be lazy and selfish. 2 question marks. Okay, do you want me to dissect your argument? Is that what you want me to do? Okay, so I'll do that. This will be the last thing. So somebody is trying to, I don't know, push my buttons or do something. I don't know. All right, so here we go. Let's see if we can break down their argument, right? This will be your little teaser for the workshop again. Allah has created human beings. Yeah, okay, true. Human beings, by nature, tend to be lazy and selfish. Okay, can we establish that? Do you have proofs for that? What do you mean by nature? What do you mean that they're lazy and selfish? Right? Are you saying all human beings are lazy and selfish? Are you saying some of them are? What are we trying to say? If you're trying to say the conclusion is Allah, na'udhu billah, is lazy and selfish, that's not going to work. And I'll give you how you would do this in the science of logic. Basically, you have two terms, right? You have Allah. Sorry, I'm doing it like this. I don't know why I'm leaning. Whatever. You have Allah and then human beings, right? And then in the middle, you have the statement that connects it. So it's Allah, human beings, and has created. The next statement you have is human beings, let's say lazy and selfish by nature, and then you have tend to be. Those two middle statements should follow through and be the exact same thing, which they're not. So if you really wanted to make a statement like this, you'd have to say, Allah created human beings were created to be lazy and selfish, therefore Allah created, well actually that wouldn't work either. They can't prove it, sorry. So it's broken, I showed you that it's broken, but yeah. If there's any other question you have about this, I guess you'll have to mention it separately. I don't know what else we can do with this, but it obviously doesn't line up, right? Because the same terms are not following through. We said that nature has to be defined, laziness and selfishness have to be defined, and you have to figure out whether you're talking about all human beings or some human beings. If you want to, yeah, that's it. I'm getting into a logic class now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So inshallah, just a reminder that right after this, we're going to have the workshop, which we can go a bit more in depth on these kind of things. But hopefully we don't have to do the exact same example, maybe something different, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.